The first one is that we announced CORD as an independent open source project. So that is one big announcement. The second one is that we announced 3 new partners to both ONOS and CORD partnership. They include Google, Samsung, and Radisys. Each one of them brings very unique value to these projects, and we are looking forward to working with them all. As you know, the partners give significant amount of funding. They contribute people, they contribute use cases, and an opportunity to do trials. And most importantly, partners provide the strategic direction for these projects, and we really appreciate that. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our existing sponsors and partners. They include AT&T, China Unicom, NTT Communications, Verizon, SK Telecom as service providers. And then we have a number of vendors that include Ciena, Cisco, Ericsson, Fujitsu, Huawei, Intel, NEC, and Nokia. By the way, Ericsson and Huawei are so far only ONOS partners. We appreciate all the help and support we get from our partners. Okay, the third big thing this week is we are announcing the first official open source distribution of the CORD. So you can go to the website, download it, and start playing with it and start building on it. And finally, this is the summit today. To cap it off, we have a very exciting agenda, great line of speakers that we have. And of course, I'm delighted to see all of you here and your interest in CORD. I really believe that CORD represents a big opportunity. Of course, we have a lot of challenges and work ahead of us, but together, I'm sure we will be able to realize the full potential of CORD. Now, if I sound like a conventional speaker, please forgive me. Okay, so see, here is our collaborator community. I talked about our partners. Are you able to hear me? Okay. So here are the list of collaborators that have been working with us, and we really appreciate and want to thank them for all the work that we have done. So during my talk, when I said we did this, we did that, and we delivered this, it is because of our partners as well as collaborators. And I want to really thank them for all their effort as well for how far we have come. We also have a set of new collaborators, especially in the service provider space, that I'm very excited about: Telefonica, NTT East, and China Mobile. So we are looking forward to working with those service providers as well. Also, there are industry organizations like BBF and MEF that have huge communities, and they plan to use CORD as an open reference platform for their communities, and I want to thank them as well for their collaboration with us. So now let me spend some time to give you a quick overview of CORD. Some of you are very familiar with CORD, so please bear with me. And let me start with a confession. I have been in the field of networking for almost 30 years. And every time I thought about service provider infrastructure, for example, AT&T's infrastructure, I used to think in terms of backbone networks. And I always thought, when I thought about SDN, NFV, how I can try to make backbone better. Then, as we started to work with AT&T, especially Al Blackburn and Tom Anschutz, I had this enlightenment or realization that it is the central office stupid. And let me, if you are like me, or I used to think 2 years ago, let me give you some context. Okay, so central office is a very, very important facility for service providers like AT&T. A central office is a gateway to all their customers: residential customers, mobile customers, and enterprise customers. Service providers operate thousands of central offices around the globe. For example, AT&T itself operates something like 4,700 central offices in the country. Okay, now a central office may connect maybe 10,000 to 20,000 residential subscribers, maybe 10,000 to 20,000 mobile, and thousands of enterprises. More importantly, central office can be a very important vantage point for service providers to offer interesting and exciting services to their customers. Now, having said all of this, I believe this is time to reinvent the central office. So you may ask why? So here is the reason. central offices have been evolving over 40, 50 years or maybe even longer. If you go to a typical central office, I have been to few now thanks to AT&T, they may have 300 different types of equipment. Each equipment is closed, proprietary, and not programmable. Okay, and so when you think about it, what that means is that they represent the most of the capex and opex service providers spend on. Also, because they're closed, proprietary, not programmable, what that means is that inhibits ability to innovate, ability to create new services and new and exciting services for the service providers. Okay, and so our mission as part of CORD project is to deliver to service provider what we call economies of a data center and agility of a cloud. What we mean by that is we want to enable service providers to be able to build central offices like cloud providers build data centers. That is, build it with few building blocks, and these building blocks are built with merchant silicon, white boxes, and open source. And then, and by agility, what we mean is that give them software platform that they can use to create new services quickly, like cloud providers do today. For example, they may be introducing a service every week. Sometimes they may introduce one service and have an upgrade within a day as well. So we want to give that kind of agility to service providers as well. Okay, so now this is the high-level CORD architecture that is trying to show how we may be able to accomplish this. Okay, if you look at it, it is trying to leverage these technology trends of this decade, SDN, NFV, and cloud. And what you see is in the middle of it, there is a fabric. This is a fabric that interconnects everything within the central office. This fabric has a similar architecture like what is used in a data center, leaf spine architecture built with white boxes that are open flow enabled white boxes. What this fabric interconnects is a set of server racks, because if you are going to run VNFs as services in VMs or containers, you need servers. And similarly, if you are going to run cloud services, you need servers as well. And they're built like traditional servers with commodity servers, OCP kind of servers, for example. Now, if you focus on the access rack, that is what makes a central office unique, because even in a data center, you may have 10 fibers coming in, but that is it. Whereas when you think about a central office, as I mentioned, it may be bringing in connectivity from 10,000, 20,000 residential subscribers, 10,000, 20,000 mobile backhaul, and thousands of enterprises. So that access rack is where there are challenges, because we want to build those access racks using the same philosophy, same approach as we are building switches and servers. That is merchant silicon, white boxes, open source. And that's what we're trying to do. And then if you look at, there are two control planes shown there. So one control plane is for networking. So all the networking is, in this context, open flow enabled, SDN based, and that is realized using ONOS as the SDN operating system and a set of control applications that run on top. And then there is a second control plane that is trying to control and manage virtualization, services, service orchestration, and all of that. And that is realized using OpenStack, Docker, and one of the own software platform that we have built called XOS that does all the service composition and management. And you will hear more about this architecture when Larry Peterson and Saurav Das, they are going to talk about later in the day. Okay, now what has happened in last 6 months to 9 months is we have demonstrated at a small scale that we can take the same platform and support 3 domains of use: residential, mobile, and enterprise. So for example, in the residential case, what we have done is that we have demonstrated how we can take merchant silicon from PMC, build a pizza box that is a white box, and then we can have different kinds of services. That is, for example, virtual OLT, all the control is extracted and that is implemented in software running as a VM or a container in software. And we can have other services such as virtual subscriber gateway, which is like virtual CPE, virtual router, which is like virtual BNG, and CDN kinds of thing. Then we have also demonstrated that you can support mobile customers with disaggregated and virtualized radio access network, and disaggregated and virtualized EPC, all implemented as services running on our software stack. We have also demonstrated how you can support enterprise customers, and you can allow enterprises to create virtual networks on demand. You can allow enterprises to create add value-added services to their virtual network, and enterprises can observe and control their own virtual network. So that's what we have done so far. And so, so now, in last 6 months or so, I have talked to and traveled and talked to many service providers around the globe. And uniformly, I get very exciting reaction that people want to use CORD. They want to use it for experimentation, for creating services, do trials, and hopefully do deployments quickly. So when you see, I want to make two observations. One is, we showed that on the same CORD platform, you can create multiple domains of use, and you can create many services. That is one thing we have done so far. And the second thing is, we know that many service providers around the globe are very interested in using CORD. This is what led us to decide that we want to create CORD as an open source project. It can be an open source platform in its own right, and people can build services and solutions on top of that. Oops. Okay. So then you may ask, what is in an open source CORD distribution? Okay. So as you can see, CORD is not a single component. It is not a software component or hardware component. It's an integrated solutions platform. So what that means is that a distribution for CORD includes a hardware blueprint, that includes bill of materials, it includes assembly instruction, test infrastructure, and so on. And so today, if you go to the CORD website, you will see that. You will also see that there is a software distribution, and you can divide the software into two halves. The first half is the platform software that has OpenStack, ONOS, XOS, and some of the OCP components as well. Okay, and then there are second piece of the component is domain specific services, maybe for residential, for mobile, as well as for enterprise. Now, I want to make two more observations. One observation is that there are many configurations of CORD possible. You can create one which is very small and portable that you can use for development, experimentation, and all of that. Or you can use that kind of a configuration for rural areas, or you can take that configuration for maybe underdeveloped world so that you can quickly deploy networks in that part of the world. So that is one possibility. But you can also have a large configuration that are multi-rack, and that can be used in large central offices, for example, and everything in between. The second thing I want to emphasize is we have at least two vendors, that is Ciena and Radisys. Both have publicly announced that they are wanting to be the system integrator for CORD, and they will be wanting to provide turnkey pods to whoever asks for it, of course with a PO. Okay, but then those central office pods can show up at your doorstep. You can plug them in, and then you can get a central office pod up and working in a day, or less than a day, hopefully. If we can realize that vision, you can see that this will be revolutionary for the service provider industry, and that's what we are after. Okay, so the thing is, in last few months, people keep asking me, what are the unique differentiator or value proposition of CORD? So I thought I'll just enumerate them and see whether I can communicate that. So the first is the unique and strong partnership. Okay, so we have a very unique partnership of people. So if you look at Open Networking Lab, it is an independent non-profit organization, vendor neutral, service provider neutral, and it has a core engineering that can provide engineering and architecture leadership. Then we have a very special engagement with service provider. The partnership with service provider is very special. They give us funding, they give us people, resources, use cases, and that is a very special engagement that we have service provider. And you see that everything we do is in support of service provider. Bring them value, that is what we are after. Okay, and of course we have vendors, incumbent vendors, small vendors, and this list is growing. The second unique differentiator is that CORD is not a component. As I mentioned earlier and as you saw, it is an integrated solutions platform. It is bringing hardware together, many software building blocks together, and creating a solutions platform on which you can create new services and something that is more ready for deployment and experimentation. Okay. The second thing is the same platform can support at least 3 domains of use. Okay, that we have already demonstrated, and there may be more. And finally, it is leveraging merchant silicon and white boxes, not only for switches and servers, but it is doing that for access racks as well, and that is something unique and brings value to service provider. And finally, it is trying to bring a best of open source components together, such as ONOS, Trellis, XOS, Docker, and so on. Okay, so finally, when you think about the future of CORD, right, you should think in terms of 4 areas. Okay, and that is what I told you, whatever we have done so far, but that is not that important. What is important is what are we going to do next? And I suppose that is what you are all interested in. So when you think about what is next, you should think about the platform, the domains of use, community, and then what matters the most, how can we bring value to service providers? Okay. Now, when it comes to platform, of course, we want to continue to make the architecture better and better. We want to add lots of features and functions so it becomes ready for production deployment in different service provider networks. And of course, we want to enable different types of configurations, as I mentioned earlier, for different settings. When we think about the domains of use, we want to make sure that we have access technologies and access racks that are production ready, and they use similar philosophy. That is, again, merchant silicon, white boxes, and open source. And then, of course, whenever you have an open source project, community matters a lot. So we want to make sure that we are nurturing a vibrant community of developers as well as users, and we are trying to grow the ecosystem. Finally, bringing the value, what matters. So the thing is that at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to help service provider adopt this particular platform. And that means we have to move from proof of concept to lab trials, to field trials, to actual production deployment. And that is what will bring us the biggest reward or biggest gratification that we have succeeded in what we want to do. Okay, so let me come to the summit. We have a very exciting agenda and exciting line of speakers. It includes a number of keynotes talks, starting with Google. Google is our newest service provider member, so looking forward to talk from Google. Then we have AT&T and China Unicom. They have been partners with us all along, so looking forward to their perspective on CORD. And as CORD becomes an open source project, we are a Linux Foundation project, and so Jim Zemlin is going to talk about CORD as an open source project. Then we will go deeper into CORD in terms of platform as well as domains of use. And then the second half of it is about this open source distribution. So how can you download it, use it, build it, contribute to it, and all of that. So that will be the next thing. And then the breakout sessions that are even more important, because breakout session is where we are going to talk about the future. We are going to line up present the roadmap that we have, and then we want your participation and input, how to make the roadmap better, where you want to participate, how you want to contribute, and so on. Okay, so with that, I will stop. And unless there is a burning question, I want to make a transition to our first keynote. Is there anything that is people really want to ask right away? So I'm happy to answer. No? Okay, so give me opportunity to welcome Craig Barrett, who is our first keynote speaker from Google. He's our champion for Google to join the CORD partnership. Really appreciate him. He's a senior VP at Google, running the Google Access part of the business for Google. He's a leader in the wireless and communication space. I'm sure you know about him. He was the CEO of Atheros Communication for many years, took it IPO. Finally, it was acquired by Qualcomm. Before that, of course, he has done many other things. He's originally from Australia. That is where he studied. Then he's also did masters and PhD at Stanford. recently when I was Googling him, I found something interesting. So obviously he's an amazing business leader, but he's an amazing engineer too. And even now, what I understand is he loves programming for hobby, which is pretty amazing. My hats off to you. I kind of gave up programming maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So with that, here is Craig.
Great. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CORD Summit. And it's really a pleasure for us at Google to be hosting many key people from the industry, carriers in the ecosystem. And so welcome. And we really hope that the sessions today will be productive. And I look forward to meeting some of you during the break and during the sessions. So thank you very much for the introduction, Guru. The team that I lead at Google is really focused on creating abundant access. As you know, around the world, there's a tremendous shortfall in access to the internet. There are many countries where only a small percentage of the population is online. And even in developed markets, in spite of the tremendous investment and innovation that's happening in the industry,